Well, good morning, California. Si se puede, and we will. And I just want to make one correction to the remarks of our great executive director of Equal Rights Advocates. It's not that we're done, or we're almost done, or we're not done. We've just begun. We have just begun. There is so much more for us to do. We have just touched the surface. And I was honored to author what was at the time the strongest equal pay bill in the country. Equal pay for work of comparable value, or what we're calling today substantially similar work. 41 states now are using that template for their own equal pay bills. That's what California does. That's what we can be, not just for the women and the girls of our own state, but leaders throughout the country. And especially at a time where we are seeing an effort to vilify, to subjugate, to humiliate women, when the leadership in Washington, D.C. is continuing almost daily attacks against women, people of color, the LGBTQ community, everyone who doesn't look like the orange man in the White House. And it is time for us to stand up and say, we are going to move forward for the future. We are going to move forward for the people who are with us today. We are going to do more so that equality of opportunity is something that each and every person is entitled to pursue and obtain, regardless of their gender, regardless of their sexual orientation, regardless of their race, religion, because that is the promise of America, and we women are going to make darn sure that that promise is kept. So the bills that we're talking about today are critical to improving women's economic security by ensuring that women are paid fair wages and are able to pursue their work and careers free from sexual harassment. And that's why we need your support. In 2018, it's certainly time for equal pay, and it's time to eliminate sexual harassment in the workplace once and for all, period. So I am proud to be authoring 3 of the bills that are part of the 2018 Stronger California legislative priorities designed to bring gender equality to the workplace. And as brave women came forward through the Me Too movement, we learned that our workplaces and our courts have far too often been complicit in allowing sexual harassment to continue through the decades and to continue unchecked. And so I've introduced this year SB 1300, which seeks to end that kind of behavior once and for all by comprehensively addressing sexual harassment in the workplace, by prohibiting these underhanded legal tactics that prevent victims from speaking out about sexual harassment and seeking justice in our courts, where they are entitled to go and they are entitled to get that justice without being mansplained, without being undermined by the legal process or the judges who themselves, in some instances, have been complicit in that behavior. This bill, SB 1300, provides guidance to the courts to ensure that the severe and pervasive legal standard that exists in California is fairly and consistently applied to protect victims of work-related harassment. And it allows employers to provide bystander intervention training as part of that regular sexual harassment training they are legally allowed and required now to provide. Because we know sexual harassment is about equal opportunity in the workplace, about prohibiting that from happening. We've got to end sexual harassment. It's about civil rights. And SB 1300 ensures that the civil rights of victims are honored and protected in our courts. I also have SB 224, which was referenced a bit earlier. It makes it explicit that the landmark Unruh Civil Rights Act applies in the workforce specifically to include investors and legislators and lobbyists and directors and producers and other people, as mentioned, who want to do business with us but don't think they have to follow the rules because they're not employing us. And given the stark imbalances in these industries, it is critical we call them out directly and clarify that these relationships are also protected from work-related harassment. And finally, SB 1284 continues to build on the tremendous momentum we've had in California on leading the country on equal pay, starting with the Fair Pay Act in 2015. SB 1284 keeps us in the forefront of taking affirmative steps to close the gender and the wage gap by holding companies accountable for their pay practices, and is a direct response to the Trump rollbacks in this very arena. So with that, we need to send a message that despite setbacks at the federal level, California is leading the way in closing the gender and race wage gap, and I have colleagues here today with whom I'm proud to stand, although I seem to be a lot shorter, but it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. And we got a lot of fight in us, and we're going to get the answer, and the answer is yes. Thank you.